Great stuff. So, welcome to this month's Profit Expert live web event. These events, as always, are about giving clarity, confidence, and cash. And this month, we're covering revenue per employee. And revenue per employee is one of the most useful numbers for any business with a team. Especially useful things like service and advice business like ours, because people are usually the biggest cost and the biggest source of value. But it's not just for accountants, consultants, or agencies. It matters for restaurants, for retailers, for trades, manufacturers, and basically any business that needs people to deliver the work. And kind of the question underneath revenue employee is about: is your business turning the time, skills, and effort into your team into enough revenue, enough profit, and enough cash? So certainly today it's not about using the number as a stick to beat your team with. I would never beat my team, but we're going to use it as kind of as a clue and a hint, because it shows whether the business is scaling properly or whether sometimes you're just adding people, adding cost, and adding a bit of stress. So in terms of the move the slide on, who are these events for? I mean, generally, obviously aimed at owner managed businesses, aimed at people with 6 or 7 figure turnovers and looking to double profits, and people who ultimately want more profit, more cash, and more control in the business, which is often a big thing when we speak to business owners. So why this topic? Well, a couple of months ago, we held the Business Improvement Summit in the central Liverpool, and we had like 50 business owners in a room. And one of the questions we asked was, what keeps you awake at night? And as you can imagine, there were an array of answers, but a few came very high at the top, and lots of people said the same things. And the top 3 basically were cash flow, your own time as the owner, and then also the team and managing the team and getting the most out of the team. So what we've done was we kind of us took note of that and made the next 3 of these events about those. So 2 months ago we did making the cash flow. Last month we did reclaiming your time, and therefore this month revenue per employee, about getting the most out of the team. And I think in terms of that, for those of you who were with us last month or have caught the recording, how is this different to last month? Because last month we did reclaiming your time, but that session was mainly about the business owner, your diary, your interruptions, your decision making, your stop doing list. We talk about your 90-minute slot and so on and so forth. This month clearly is related, but it's absolutely not the same session again. Today is more about your business model. It's about whether the whole business is set up so people can produce more of the right output without burning themselves out. So we'll still talk about, there are some common bits. We'll still talk about delegation, decision rules, the bottlenecks of the owner, because they do matter. But the focus is different. This time, it's not just how do I get more time back. It's how to increase the output, the profits, and the capacity of the business as a whole. And I talk about capacity because when we speak to, obviously I speak to a lot of business owners, it's my job, and I hear a lot, we're at capacity. I've said it myself along the way, and sometimes it's absolutely true. Sometimes you really do need more people, more space, more equipment, but often when you dig into it, we're at capacity actually means something slightly different. It might mean that you, the owner, are at capacity. It might mean the team are busy, but not always doing the right work. It might be that work is getting stuck in queues to kind of get out the door, or people are waiting for decisions, or customers are waiting. Even though kind of everyone feels flat out and is getting stuff done, the stuff's not getting through the other end because, like I say, the right stuff's not been done. And that's why revenue per employee can be so useful, because it cuts through the busy feeling and asks whether the business is actually getting enough commercial output from the team, from the systems and the structure you already have. Now, in terms of the actual number itself, revenue per employee, the calculation is very, very simple. And I know it's easy to say that I'm a mathematician with a master's degree and an accountant, but it is very, very simple. So revenue per employee is your total revenue divided by your total number of employees, and your employees expressed as full-time equivalents. So if you've got 10 full-time equivalent people and you've got £1 million of turnover, it's £100,000 of revenue per employee. So quite a simple sum in a way, but the important bit isn't the maths, it's then what it tells you. Because what it does, it tells you how effectively the business is using its people to generate revenue. It gives you a clue on productivity, staffing levels, systems, technology, pricing, and that work mix. And because people costs have risen so much over the last couple of years, that clue is more valuable now than ever. So to give you a simple example, and the simple example, the starting point is exactly the sum I've just used. So if you've got £1 million of revenue and 10 full-time equivalent team members, your revenue per employee is £100,000. But then if the following year revenue grows to £1.2 million, on the face of it, that sounds great. Sales are up to 200 grand. But if the team has grown to 14 people, your revenue per employee is actually dropped and your revenue employee is down at kind of 85, 86,000 pounds. Which isn't very precise for a mathematician, £85,700. Now, it doesn't automatically mean something's wrong, but perhaps the business has hired ahead of growth. It's a strategic thing to bring some people who's about to grow. Perhaps the team members you brought in are actually salespeople to drive future sales. But it does raise the question, and it's something to look at, because it is about, has the business grown or has it just become busier and more expensive to run? And that's why this number can become a real truth teller. But it's also worth saying that it's not one to look at in isolation. So revenue per number, we look at with many of our clients at the 7 key numbers. Oh, seven key numbers which are on the screen there, and it's not about one in isolation. It's often about the pattern across all of them. It's like an overall kind of holistic business health check. One number gives a clue, but it's the pattern across all 7 that tells you what's really going on. Now, revenue per employee might point to inefficiency, but as I mentioned a minute ago, it might be because you've kind of hired ahead of some growth. Revenue per employee rising might look good, but if your service quality is dropping and cash is poor or the team are burning out, that's kind of not healthy either. So we also do look at it alongside the other 6 of the kind of 7 key numbers to give that kind of bigger picture. And why? And also on this little example, 7 key numbers, you can see obviously greens are good, reds are bad. In this one, actually, it's the cash days. Actually, is the red one. But clearly, if we're looking at that with the clients, we say, okay, well, actually, that's a little bit worse than the previous period. We should look at that. But overall, clearly, there's a lot of green there. And it actually may be that there's a reason that has gone up to fuel the other greens, and revenue per employee is similar. It's looking at it in conjunction. Now, why does it matter so much now? Well, it's always been very, very important. But of course, as I mentioned, the cost of employing people has gone up and up and up. So, minimum wage has risen, employees' national insurance has gone up, recruitment's harder, good people are valuable, and quite rightly, they're not cheap. And like the minimum wage in hospitality and retail, this is huge because, the percentage increase in minimum wage is quite a lot. And if your wage cost has gone up, but your output, your pricing, workflow haven't changed, profit is getting squeezed very quickly. And the answer is not necessarily to then squeeze the team. That's like generally not what today is about. The answer is to make sure the business is not wasting their time. So it's about having better pricing, better systems, better roles, better workflow, better use of technology, and better training. So as a graduate, that's it. Clearly we're an accounting practice. And for us, the number matters a lot because we sell advice, service, and expertise. And when we're looking at our revenue employee, one of the things, we've made a conscious decision not to offshore our accounting team. Our accounting team are all in the UK. Many of my peers offshore, and that's absolutely fine and good. And many of my best friends are doing that. It works very well for them. But for us, we've made that decision because we think what matters is the kind of quality, the communication, the way we look after clients. But it also means, therefore, our revenue per employee might be lower because our employee costs are a bit higher. So therefore, we need to be very sharp on how we use people's time if we're going to make it work. And that's principles the same for anyone who chooses kind of quality over kind of cheaper labour. And, with us, again, we have to look how we structure our team, and there are times when we've perhaps been a bit top heavy as people have grown with us, which is great, but of course costs go up, and like any service business, we need some people, as in the new graduates or younger people coming in as well, else we become top heavy and we become too expensive. But it's one of those ones that being very sure therefore that the business model supports the choice you kind of make. So what revenue per employee is not? Well, it's not. This is really important actually, because it's not a measure of how hard your team work. It's not a blame tool. It's not a reason, let's say, to squeeze people. Not a target to improve at the cost of service, quality, or morale. In many businesses, the team, I say many businesses, all businesses, the team are working very, very hard. The issue is very rarely effort. The issue is leverage. If people are spending hours chasing information, fixing avoidable mistakes, doing low value work, waiting for approvals or battling poor systems, then the problem clearly is not the people themselves, it's the way the business is set up around them. So please don't take this number back to the team and say you need to work harder. That would be entirely the wrong lesson to take away from the session today. The thing to take away is to think, how do you make it easier for good people to do great work? So what RPE is, it's a measure of leverage. It tells you how well the business turns people, systems, pricing, and work mix into revenue. So the chainsaw and the handsaw image on the screen is a useful way to think about this, because two people might work just as hard as each other, but if one person's got a better tool, if you've got a chainsaw rather than handsaw, you can get it done some more quickly. And as well as better tool, it could be better training, better systems, clearer priorities. Like I say, the output's going to be completely different. It doesn't make one person better or more committed or even working harder. They've just got more leverage. So that's what we're looking at today. Where we can create better leverage, so the same effort produces a better result. Now, with revenue per employee, a lot of things, there's some patterns often come out when you're kind of struggling with revenue per employee. And the first one is bottlenecks. Where work is waiting. It might be waiting for you, the owner, which we covered last month in Reclaiming Your Time, but it's equally as relevant here. Is if you're the bottleneck, that's an issue. Waiting for approvals within the team, waiting for decision, waiting for information from your customer or client, waiting because the next person in the chain is too busy. And the next person in the chain sometimes is the customer, making that decision of what they're buying or what they need or giving you stuff. And you see this in lots of businesses, that what ends up happening is customers waiting while the team are busy. The team are waiting while you're in meetings or something. The owner, you get, frustrated because everyone keeps asking questions. Everyone's busy, but the work isn't flowing. So the fix is, it clearly is not everyone works harder. It's getting rules over decisions, clearer authority, better workflow, and a regular rhythm. So, for example, it's thinking about which decisions can the team make without you? What can be approved up to a certain amount? Say purchase up to a certain amount don't need your approval, or have you? What is urgent enough that they can interrupt you, as opposed to what could just wait for the next weekly meeting, daily meeting, whenever you might have a rhythm of meetings? Because bottlenecks obviously reduce the revenue per employee because they're reducing output from the same people. Second pattern is rework. Rework is one of the biggest hidden drains on capacity. It's the work you do once, then have to do it again, because something's missing, something's unclear, or something was wrong. Perhaps even a mistake. In an accounting firm, that might be, if one of our clients is doing their own bookkeeping, it might be when they give it over to us, they haven't actually finished, it's not really ready for us. There's invoices missing that we need to do the work. They've inconsistently coded something within their, zero or whatever, or questions that could be answered up front. In an HR business, it might be a policy or contract being rewritten several times because the brief wasn't clear. In a health and safety consultancy, it might be a site visit that leaves lots of follow-up because the information wasn't captured properly the first time when you were there. So rework often feels normal because it's kind of hidden inside the day and it's doing the do and doing the work. But if you add it up, it can be a massive kind of capacity leak. You're kind of really, really busy, but nothing's getting done, or everything's taking a lot longer to get done than it should. And the solution is usually, excuse me, better checklists, clearer standards, better onboarding, so your customers know what to expect, what you need from them, fewer handovers, where information gets lost, getting handed from one person to another, or the same work gets done twice, and a stronger first time capture of information. One of the things we did a couple of years ago is brought out a little brochure, a book that we give to our clients and give parts of them each time we do a bit of work. It's called How We Work Together. And it's just a reminder, really, that whenever we're asking for, if clients do their own bookkeeping, it just has a little checklist of, okay, the bookkeeping's done when you've done A, B, C, D, E, and F. We'll then state, what we're asking for, the information we need to do the work, and also why. So, if we're doing a VAT return, we'll say, okay, we need the bank statement at the end of the quarter. Why do we need it? It's so we can just check that balance is the same as in Xero, because sometimes Xero duplicates a line or skips a line. So it's just a quick check, balance on the last day of the quarter against Xero. That's why we want it, and so on and so forth. Because we're just going to make it clear why we need the stuff, which helps them people think, great, it's worth giving you, and therefore means we can, when we get it, we can work more smoothly through rather than going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Pattern 3 is the wrong work mix. This is where the team are genuinely busy, but the work fin in the diary is not what it should be. I've used a little image of rocks here, and it's that thing, isn't it? If you have your big rocks, your important things to do, and put them into the jar first, and then the little tasks, the pebbles and the sand, put in after, they all slide in nicely around each other and all fits. But if you put the pebbles and the sands, like the little task in first, you can't then get the rock in because that doesn't slip in. So this is like if you're doing low margin services that are taking premium time off you. It might be legacy customers, legacy clients who no longer fit your business, products you might sell that might be popular but are not profitable, or lots of small jobs that just create far more admin than anyone really realizes. Again, to use us as an example, in our world, so like client mix matters. Some clients are a brilliant fit for us. They value advice, work with our systems, respond properly, and appreciate the service. But others can take far more time than the fee justifies. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, this is something that's some the office gardener. The so yeah, and the same applies in all businesses. So a restaurant can be full, but it's the wrong covers at the wrong price. If on a Saturday evening you've got people coming in who are just ordering a starter and some tap water, that's not making you the money you need the right people in. A consultancy full of low value projects, a retailer selling products that create volume but a weak margin. And of course, even worse, if you're a bricks and mortar one and they're actually big and they're taking space. If you think space on the shelves as such, you've only got so much space on the shelves. You don't have a lot of space being taken up by stuff you're making no money on. So, and it's also true, of course, for your diary. Can be full, but your profit's still weak. And revenue per employee just helps flag that. And the last of the patterns is when you're the ceiling. It's not dissimilar to the bottlenecks, but this is back to you or me in my business. This happens when every decision needs you, every awkward customer needs you, every exception comes to you, every issue waits until you're free. It might make you feel important, but it's also a massive, massive limit on growth. If the business can only move as fast as the owner can decide, approve, and respond, the owner's the ceiling again and stops that growth. This does link most closely back to last month's session, but today the angle's a bit different because today's not just about you, your time, or your stress. It's about the output of the whole business and you getting in the way of that. So when you, the owner of the ceiling, revenue per employee suffers because the team can't produce at full pace because they're waiting for you, they need your input. So take that through. Before you hire, when you feel at capacity, the obvious answer is, okay, we need another person. Let's recruit. And sometimes that of course is absolutely right. I'm not in any way, shape or form anti-recruitment. We've got 2 new starters next week. If the demand is there, the work's profitable and the systems are clear, hiring it is exactly the right move. But Hiring into a messy system just makes a bigger, messier system. So before you hire, you need to ask some questions. So, is the current team under supported? So, is that your capacity, they're not supported enough to be doing the job quicker, better, more efficiently? Are your processes clear? Is the work mix right? And would a new hire increase the output, or would they just spread the problem across more people? And let's say that's particularly important now because the cost of people has gone up. A new salary is not just a salary; it brings the employer's NI, which has gone up, pension, training, management time, software equipment, holiday cover, risk, all those things. So it's not about just can we afford another person. It's will another person genuinely improve our output? Will they improve our capacity, and will they improve our profit? So let's look at, and I've talked a lot about leverage earlier. Let's look at the three main levers to make your revenue per employee better. So the three main ones. The first is growing revenue without adding people. So that can be pricing. I mean, we'll look at each in detail after this, but at high level, that can be pricing, premium offers, conversion, better customer mix, clearer scope. Second is improving the team performance. So clear roles, so the right work's going to the right person, training, confidence, decision rules, accountability. And the third is improving your systems and your flows, so standardizing, automating, reducing handovers, removing duplication, and stopping email and admin just dictating the day. They overlap, but they're not the same. So the first lever is kind of commercial. The second one's about people, and the third's about process. So the best improvements usually come from doing, as you can imagine, a bit of all three. So the first one, growing your revenue without adding people. So often the quickest route to improving your revenue per employee, because obviously if your sales go up and your people stay the same, it's gone straight for your revenue per employee. That sum of sales divided by people, that one's gone up, that stays the same. Revenue per employee is up. Obviously the quickest, not necessarily the easiest. But as an example, it might be looking at pricing. So if costs have gone up and your value has improved, but your prices haven't moved recently, that math is eventually going to hurt you. So therefore, look at a price increase. It could mean premium offers. So these are usually where customers will pay a premium price, i.e., a higher price, to have a better version of something. So it could be more speed, goes quicker, more certainty, more support, more convenience, or a better experience. So it's higher revenue without necessarily much more time or effort. And I always use my very simple example is the trains and who obviously charge more if you travel during rush hour. Doesn't cost them any more really. Or similarly, first class on a train, which is a lot more money. But in reality, apart from laying on a couple of free cups of coffee and a snack in many cases, the actual cost of delivering first class is not much more. Conversion. So if you're already getting inquiries, but not enough of the right ones are turning into profitable work, improving your sales process can lift revenue without adding another person. And very closely linked to that actually is the customer client mix. So in that sales process, is getting the right people in, because not all revenue is equal. Some customers take a lot of your time up, create very little margin and cause a lot of friction, whereas others are a brilliant fit. They value what you do, pay properly, and are actually easier to serve. So that customer client mix is really important too. And also, if you're selling services, and this can happen with products too sometimes, but more likely with services, if you haven't got a clear scope, you end up giving away time for free. And therefore having more clarity on that and clarity on the scope can be a massive one in any sort of service business. So either you are doing less work for the same fee, I could just staying within the scope you agreed, or being clear that is additional work and there is a fee for that. So the first lever is not by growing revenue, it's not necessarily just selling more, it's about selling better. Better pricing, better offers, better fit customers, better conversion, or better scope. Okay, so the second lever is team performance. Again, it's not about telling the team to work harder. It's about making sure people in the right roles, doing the right work with the right support and the right authority. And this is where, I mean, first it's about getting that structure right, because you do want to think of actually, I mean, many businesses in want to have some sort of kind of pyramid structure, but if all the people at the bottom start to move to the top and it becomes inverted, you just become too expensive, your team. But then it's about having like something like this kind of grid. Um, so it makes you ask this kind of what type of work is this? Who should own it? And what do they need to do it well? So on this grid, I'm not going to read them all, but just we've got the bottom on the admin support examples of what's being done. So inbox and emails, diary and scheduling, and so on and so forth. Who's doing it or owns it? But what do they need to do it well? So it might be checklist templates, clear rules, and obviously access to the correct systems. Then repeatable delivery. The delivery team or operations, again, they're doing the standard client or customer work, the service delivery. But over on the right, the important bit there is they've got a process, they've got training, the quality standards, the tools and systems. And up to the top, the strategic bit, which is probably you, the owners and directors, bringing vision and direction, pricing and offer strategy. What do you need? I actually need focus time, space to think, and kind of so on, clear priorities, and obviously the key numbers, so you know that the decisions having the effects you kind of want and you're tracking it. And this kind of fits nicely with the delegate ladder. And this comes from a book called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, which is a good read, quite nice and easy read too, but as in it's a good read. And the clue's in the title. It's basically about buying back your time, and because all of our time has a value, is effectively the things you can buy for quite cheap, get someone else to do. And he goes through kind of the order, and it pretty much mirrors the previous slide in terms of what you buy first. And if you look down the bottom, admin support is lower value, more time, and therefore the first thing you should delegate and buy in is the admin. The next bit is delegating or buying in delivering operations. Then it's marketing and sales, but probably the strategic vision stays with you, or for the longest until you pass at a point where you want to exit the business or run from afar. And kind of one of the problems is for many businesses, the ladder's upside down. So the owner is actually doing the admin, senior people are fixing basic errors, skilled people are chasing missing information, the team wait for decisions. They could probably make themselves if the rules are clear. So that hurts revenue per employee because expensive time is being used on lower value work. So this leaves is very much about having the right people doing the right work at the right level. So clear roles, decision rules, so people know the decisions they can make. And I'll go back to that simple one of if it's for purchases, I mean, choose incredibly obvious one. Just think in my own businesses. I clearly don't get involved, particularly in buying stationery, tea, coffee, water, Coke, all that sort of thing. So basically, there are people in the team who can just do that without asking me, unless it hits a certain amount. So they probably wouldn't buy a laptop without running it past me first. I probably then don't want to be involved in all the info about the laptop. But fundamentally, if we're buying some of that kind of value, I at least want to be kind of consulted before I come into the office and find 12 new laptops and a massive bill. But clearly, the day-to-day stuff, there's a clear kind of decision rule there or approval kind of level. So it's very much about that, and therefore having that flow so people know what they can do. They can do their own thing, do it well, and not always be asking questions, but also know the flow of where it goes next. So it's about clear roles. It's about decision rules and training big one and accountability. And when this works well, you're not squeezing more out of people. You're just helping good people produce better output because the business is using their time properly. And the third lever is improving systems and flow, which follows naturally from the delegate ladder. The delegate ladder tells you where the work should fit. Systems and flow is make sure the work can actually move there without chaos. So you can't just throw a task at someone, no process, no checklist, no training, no clear outcome, and call it delegation. that's not delegation, it's just moving confusion around the office. So this leaves out making the work easier to do well. So the first step is to standardize things. So if something happens regularly, there should be a clear way of doing it. A checklist, a template, a script, a save reply, a workflow, a short video showing how it should be done. Here at JDA, we love our systems. And why do we love systems? Well, two things, one of which is consistency, because I want there to be consistency, a JDA feel to things that go out the door, the way we do stuff, and the service therefore a client gets, and also on efficiency, so we don't have to think every time, how do you do that? And if you think in systems, the classic example we use over systems and standardization is McDonald's. So if you want a Big Mac anywhere in the world, broadly, there's a precise system of how they make the Big Mac, from the ingredients to how it's cooked. And that means if you walk into any McDonald's, a Big Mac tastes the same. And I'm saying that as a man who's never had a Big Mac. There you go. But so I'm told they all taste the same. But the point is they taste the same, but also it means it's incredibly efficient as well. So when the next McDonald's opens, the next one, and the next one, and the next one, there's a system and standardization there. So step one is actually that standardizing. Then where possible, it's automating it. So what is being typed manually every week? What's being copied from one system into another? What reminders, what reports, what approvals, what follow-ups could happen automatically? And automation isn't about replacing people. It's about taking repetitive work away from people so they can focus on the bits that needs judgment, service, and expertise. And this is also where AI can actually be really useful. And I remember actually doing a little presentation to the team, because 3 years ago now, about AI for the first time and making it very clear. Then actually, this is not about taking people's jobs away. It's making us slicker and allowing you to do the better bits of the job, not the bits that kind of drive us all mad. But I don't think AI is some magic wand that fixes a messy business overnight. If your process is unclear, AI might actually just help you create more confusion more quickly. But if you do have repeatable work, clear information, sensible process, AI, of course, can help with efficiency. And, it might help summarizing meeting notes, drafting follow-up emails, creating first draft reports, research, pulling key points out of long documents, putting systems together. And I've used it to draft systems for us when I'll talk out loud as such, because I'll speak to ChatGPT and the likes, because it's quicker than typing. But I might speak out loud, and then it will nicely pull it together and put it into something that fits our system, rather than just the blurb out of John's head. And let's say we use AI as a support tool for research. I mean, it doesn't replace the judgment of an accountant. It certainly doesn't replace proper advice, but some of the admin and drafting load away, absolutely definitely, so the team can spend more time on the bit that needs judgment, context, advice. So then we've got reduced handovers. Every handover from person to person creates a risk that something gets missed, gets misunderstood, it gets delayed. Some handovers are necessary, but if work bounces around 5 people when it could flow through just 2, it's probably costing time and it's costing quality. Then removing duplication. Where are people entering the same information twice? Where are 2 people checking the same thing? Where are you asking customers for information you already have? And then finally, stopping email and admin just dictating your day. Email is a very useful tool, but it's a terrible operating system. If everything lives in the inbox, it's hard to see what's stuck, what is urgent, what's waiting, what is complete. You need a better system to create a smoother flow. Because then that smoother flow would create more capacity, and more capacity improves that revenue per employee figure, and for the right reasons. So then it's about turning that into a bit of a plan. So the aim, like today, and we'll do a little 30-day checklist in a few minutes. But the aim is not to leave. We've got 87 ideas. We actually had a document called, it was actually, I used number 87 because it was 87 ways to increase revenue per employee. Lots of useful ideas, but if you try to implement all of them, you'll just get nothing done and you'll become a bottleneck again. So basically, it's about simplifying a bit and think about what should we stop, what should we simplify, what can we automate, what should we delegate, and what can we charge more for. And those 5 questions in a way, um, a good start to create a very practical plan. You're looking at the biggest capacity leaks, the things that if you fix them would improve output, your profit or stress the most quickly. And then if you want to use all 87, you can chip away at the others later. You get your 3 or 4 biggies, and that'll be different in everyone's business. And it's about that of thinking. I know there are 5 clouds there, but it's about picking perhaps 3. So you've got perhaps a revenue action, as in something to nudge the revenue up to use kind of lever 1, one team action, something from lever 2, and one systems action, something from lever 3. And then just mention at the bottom having perhaps one for you to do for yourself, and then think about what numbers should you be tracking that'll help you kind of look at that. And like I say, revenue action might be increasing your prices on a legacy service or product you've got, a kind of which would be a quick one. A team action might be moving customer follow up to a specific person with a simple script, and a systems action might be replacing kind of a messy email chain with kind of a clear workflow. It's about having some discipline, because 3 actions properly implemented will beat 87 ideas every time that stay in a notebook, which is why I've not listed all 87 on the slide here. Cool. And what's it mean for your profit? Well, it really matters, because revenue per employee is not just it's not just about productivity. It links directly to profit, because a better work mix improves your margins. Better systems reduce kind of waste and efficiency. Better delegation frees higher value time for people to do higher value work, with potentially a higher fee. Better flow improves your service, but improves your capacity as well to do more with the same team. If you do make more genuine sales, with products or services, not just about putting prices up, you can actually handle more sales, more customers. And small numbers compound. If you improve your pricing slightly, if you reduce rework a little bit, remove a few handovers and move work to the right level, the combined effects can be significant, can be massive. And that's why it's not just about productivity or operations, it is about profits. And it feeds into that 7 key numbers, and as we offer at many of these events, is one of the things we do. We're very happy to offer to kind of attendees here today, or watching the recording, is a profit diagnostic. We look at those 7 key numbers, one of which is revenue per employee. And we look at those 7 key numbers, compare. And one of the things we do is we compare performance against similar businesses where possible, look at the pattern, because that comparison is really important. We have data from about 30,000 businesses to compare you to. And as an example, if you're looking at a restaurant, we there's enough in there to benchmark to similar type of restaurants. We don't benchmark you against McDonald's or completely different business model. If you're a licensed restaurant with an evening trade, we can compare you to licensed restaurants with an evening trade. And I use that example. We had a restaurant client, I think they're still a client, but a couple of years ago, the discussion where struggling a bit, profits are down, and we felt the business was overstaffed. The client felt that they needed that many team members to deliver excellent service, and of course service does matter in a restaurant. We'd never want to ruin service just to keep us happy or the numbers happy. But the point was, to an extent, you don't need as many team members on at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon as you do at 8 p.m. on a Saturday evening. The point also was the shape of the restaurant, because we actually had another restaurant with lots of nooks and crannies, and therefore needed more waiting on staff than would be normal to deliver good service, so people didn't get neglected. But this restaurant was, in simple terms, a rectangle, and if you stood at the bar area, you could see it's a decent sized restaurant. From the bar, you could see practically everyone, and therefore catch someone's eye, someone could catch your eye, and that didn't mean that waiting on staff should be circulating a bit anyway. But what we did was we benchmark against other restaurants in that sector and showed, the revenue per employee was, kind of half the average. And what it did was that benchmarking made the conversation factual rather than emotional or gut feel. So it wasn't, I said a moment ago, we felt they're overstaffed, but it became, we know your revenue per employee is far below the industry average, and therefore perhaps we do need to look at this. So let's explore what's going on. And that's part of what the diagnostics are about. It also gives you a clear starting point and a proper comparison, a practical action plan. But I'll put that QR code up at the end. We'll send an email out after if that's of interest. Like I say, in that, what we measure, like I say, is the 7 key numbers, of which revenue per employee sits alongside, revenue growth, gross profit, your EBITDA, cash days, how quick you get cash in, business return, and the core cash. I won't go into what exactly they are right now, but also then when you're measuring it yourself, you probably have some kind of other KPIs as well. So it might be turnaround times, it might be rework errors, it might be utilization figures, customer feedback, because they're kind of supporting numbers. For example, if revenue per employee is weak and rework is high, it points towards quality training or process. If your revenue per employee is weak but customer feedback's excellent, well, perhaps it suggests actually we can look at our pricing, because perhaps our pricing could go up a little bit. If revenue per employee is actually really high but the staff turnover is rising, there might be a different problem there. So none of it's in isolation. These are the 7 key numbers we look at businesses for the financial side, but then it's looking at other KPIs around that as well, the operational ones. And then just like say that the 30-day revenue per employee plan, which kind of probably come back to be like the capacity question asked a few slides ago, but what you actually do over the next 30 days. Well, first of all, calculate the number. Like I say, using full-time equivalent employees, so the number is fair. Benchmark it where possible. Comparison is powerful, but only if it's a sensible comparison. So compare restaurants with restaurants, consultancies with consultancies, builders with builders. And then identify the biggest of those patterns we mentioned earlier, kind of, like the bottlenecks and the owner being the ceiling. And thinking about, is it a pricing issue, a team performance issue, a systems issue, a work mix issue, or an owner bottleneck? Or, of course, it might be a revenue employee is absolutely brilliant. But even if it's brilliant, it could always be a bit better. And then picking one action against each of those 3 levers. And then it's reviewing progress in 30 days, not waiting a year. It's a number you can keep coming back to, but it is that thing of actually, picking perhaps those 3 quick wins that you can implement straight away to then say, okay, what can actually move over? I know 30 days can be quite hard in some ways to measure because it takes a little while to turn an ocean liner as such that your revenue might not just spike massively in the next month, but you can start to see the movement. And then basically, if that has kind of got you thinking, like say, how we can help is, like say, one of the things we offer to help is that profit diagnostic. As part of the profit diagnostic and the review, looking at the 7 key numbers. Let's get past the pretty picture of the team. It's about then looking at that, comparing you to similar business where we can, and then modeling the impact of small changes. We use kind of little nice sliders, perhaps like little changes to each of the 7 key numbers, or often not all 7. There's probably 5 main ones we do, but sometimes it might be 2 or 3 we look at, and often it's that thing, that cumulative thing is a compound thing that if you change each of them by 3 or 4%, the compound effect is 20%, and obviously depending on your precise numbers. So we're very happy to look at that, and that when we do one of those, it takes around about an hour. We book out a bit longer than that, just so we're not kind of rushing. But then we do put together an action plan and kind of a document for you to kind of take away upon that. So it's not about a pretty report that sits in a drawer. It's about choosing the right levers and actually having actions to do. And then on that, like I say, I'll just open up to Q&A, and if I can find the Q&A panel, which I did have. This is where we're all remote today, and I can't turn to my trusty sidekick as I normally do. Here we go. That's better. Cool. So I've actually got funny because I've also got as well, because somebody messaged me on LinkedIn who said they want to watch the recordings can't be on today, but sent me a question, which is good. So basically, so their question was actually, does it, because I know what their business does this apply outside of service businesses? Because I did mention at the start, say for us, it's very because we're selling time and expertise. Clearly, it's very important to someone like us. Is it important to whatever, a builder, a retail, and what have you. And yet, yes, it does. And actually, funny fact, actually stating the obvious here now I think this out loud is I've just talked about a restaurant, and it was really important to them because it wasn't having a look that did they actually need that many people on. And like, so when we looked at it, there were, I'm exaggerating slightly, say there was many people on at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, did an 8 p.m. on a Saturday evening, but it wasn't a million miles apart, and just being cannier about the kind of schedule and so on and so forth. So absolutely, it's important to every business. And then actually, how to include part-time people. Well, it's that thing. It's that full-time equivalent. So, and again, we have part-time people too. So if you've got two people working 50% of the time, you add them together to get a full-time equivalent. It is as I say, it's as simple as that because it's simple to me because I've just said it. But it's that thing, isn't it? If someone works 60% of the time, you count your people, and one person is a one. If they work 60% of the time, it's a 0.6, and just add them up and use that. And that's, as you can imagine, to be fair, because if just for it to be a consistent calculation across everyone. So how does outsourcing affect the number? Yeah, that's an interesting one actually, because you need to be consistent. So yeah, if you're outsourcing or offshoring, I guess your employee count itself looks lower if you only count direct employees, and therefore your revenue per employee becomes higher. And that to me, right, is understanding the model. And therefore, if I guess the point is, if there's somebody who, if you're offshoring, where effectively they are an employee who works for you all the time, well, I'd count them as a full-time equivalent anyway. If you're outsourcing, again, usually you'll know how many hours a week you're paying for that, and whether it's one person or an array of people. One of the clients who I do work for every week, like the FD, we subcontract a lot of kind of software development work. But again, we know exactly how many hours we've got each week of people, and therefore we can take that into account over the kind of the course of the year and turn that into a person for this calculation. Should I improve revenue per employee by cutting staff as nice that may sound, not as a default answer. I mean, sometimes a business is genuinely overstaffed, but usually it's understanding the cause. And can you improve pricing? Can you reduce rework? Can you improve like the rota at the restaurant? The things you can automate. And I think, like I say, when I did a little presentation on AI about 3 years ago to the team in the spring, actually, it was certainly not about cutting staff to make us more efficient, but perhaps thinking as we grow, we might not need to take on as many new staff as we might have done in the old days, if that makes sense. Because if we're more efficient, like I say, we're not going to cut anyone, but we're thinking actually we don't need an extra person for that next step. That's what that is about. Okay, so I think that covers all of the questions. So the last thing just to say, that little QR code stays up, is the next one of these is actually we've had we did cash flow in May. Last month was reclaim your time. This month is revenue per employee, all of which clearly tie back to profits and numbers. But next time we're perhaps going to be a bit more not old school accountants, it'd be a profit expert event and so on. We are going to look at tax for the first time for a number of months. So next time is tax wins without the nonsense. And we're doing that. We've got about a 6-week gap now because to allow to an extent summer holidays. So that'll be on Wednesday, the 26th of August. And again, we'll be sending emails out about that to obviously attendees of past events, and also we'll be doing it across social media as well. So I hope that was really, really useful. Thank you very, very much for joining us today, and I very much hope to see you next time. Thank you.